So we are on Module 11, which is Independence versus Interdependence. And here's our quote for this module. We are all in the same boat in a stormy sea, and we owe each other a terrible loyalty, by G.K. Chesterton. Now, in Europe, before the Renaissance, the ideal of individuality wasn't considered a good thing. People lived on farms, and groups of people were far more important than the individual. This was why a person's family name was often more important than the first name. And since then, the ideal of independence has become more important, so that most people even think of the notion of dependency as a bad thing. However, now that the internet and high-speed forms of travel and communication have become the norm, the ideal of independence as the best form of social organizing is being supplanted by a new notion of interdependence. So exactly what is interdependence? Well, the concept of interdependence is a recognition that everything and everyone is interconnected. It's different from dependence because dependence implies a power dynamic. A person who is dependent on someone or something else is under that other entity's power. But interdependence, on the other hand, suggests that we are all mutually reliant on each other. A company is a good example of interdependence at work. The CEO relies upon the customers and the workers at a company as much as they rely upon the CEO. So take any one group out of the equation and the company will fail. When you come into work each day, consider the clothes you're wearing. Someone had to make them. Or consider the roads you drive upon, or the subway system that you ride to get to work. Someone else built this. If you work in an office, consider the level of cleanliness and organization that is there. This helps you to improve your own productivity and performance. On some level, you do some work to keep it organized, but this most likely other people do that work so that you may be more productive. This also goes both ways. Reciprocity. So just as you rely upon other people in order to live a productive life, others would not be able to succeed in their lives without your efforts. So insisting upon independence and individuality ignores the notion that we are all in this together. So before I go any further, make sure that you have your student manual available, that you have it accessible. Then that way, as we're going through each topic, you're able to actually also relate it to your manual. Because remember, what I mentioned in other modules is that, of course, a presentation is only going to cover so much, whereas your manual has more detail in it. So systems theory. Now, system theory is a fairly recent mode of understanding of information. So our previous way of looking at the world tended to emphasize objects or things. And in order to understand something better, scientists would break that thing down into smaller parts. So the principal ideal in systems theory is that while that practice is useful, it ignores certain important forms of information. So system theory looks at things as they exist in context with other things. And often, scientists taking this approach are as interested in their interactions and processes between things in the system as they are in the things themselves. And obviously, this is an abstract concept, but it is important when you consider how we interact with each other. If the interaction is as important as the people involved in the interaction, then each interaction becomes a unique event. It's a lot harder to see people in terms of good and bad when each interaction is a unique experience. So, for example, if a customer has recently experienced a trauma, this might bear on that customer's interaction with the customer service representative. However, what could be a difficult situation in that context does not mean that in another context, this customer will be difficult. It is difficult to remember this because often a negative encounter can have repercussions for our general well-being. But it's important to remember how an environment can affect an interaction without defining any participant in that interaction. More than the sum of all parts. So proponents of systems theory recognize that we can only look at things in terms of a framework. So anything we observe will be largely determined by what frame we choose to view it in. This is what is meant by the system in systems theory. Another idea is that at certain levels of organization, a characteristic can emerge that wasn't present in other levels of organization. So for example, we can scientifically describe the chemicals involved in brain processes that account for dreams, but we cannot, by that description, account for the content of dreams. So the actual dream itself can be considered an emergent property of the chemicals in the brain. Another example is that a computer uses binary code to generate all of its processes, including the letters on the page you see here. But it is a code, a shorthand, whereas the letters and the meanings of the sentences are emergent properties. So this is relevant to consider when you think of teams. It has been said that a team is more than the sum of its parts, and this is the very principle of emergent properties in action. So we are on to team building. So the fast food industry has a saying, aces is their places. And this means that since not everyone can be good at everything, a good team will consist of people who are good or bad at a wide range of things. And through working together, you allow each team member's strengths to come out while minimizing their weaknesses by covering for each other. And here are some suggestions for how to work better together and allow your team to be more than the sum of its parts. You want to identify each team member's role. When the people are allowed to play their strengths, this increases the team's overall success. You want to identify group weaknesses. You want to figure out where you need to improve as a group. As soon as you recognize them, helps to keep possible sources of conflict from snowballing. You want to play together. Enjoy each other's company outside of a work setting helps to improve performance in the work setting. So when you get to know each other better, you develop a team chemistry. I remember working at a company, and that's what we did. Every month we went on an outing. Whether it was bowling, we went water rafting, we did several things in order for us to remain a team. And that's what's got to have to happen in order to help each member feel comfortable. You want to recognize group successes. So in work settings, acknowledging when the team is doing well helps to motivate both that team and other teams as well. And then finally, you want to mediate internal disputes. So whenever you collaborate and are invested in the results, it is inevitable that disputes are going to happen. That's just a part of life. But when possible, try to resolve disputes in-house. And sometimes a dispute may be so polarizing that you need to involve an outside mediation. One way to head off disputes before they get out of hand is to have in place a good procedures and practices for conflict management. And developing these areas ahead of time, make sure that everyone knows what steps to take when conflict arises. So with that in mind, we are actually on our case study. Now, Wendell never treated John the custodian with any respect because Wendell felt his job as a market analyst was more important than John's job as a custodian. So one day, John broke his leg and had to miss work for the next 6 weeks. His replacement didn't do as good a job cleaning as John did. The replacement janitor would only vacuum the carpet every 3 days, which made Wendell's allergies act up far more than in the past. So Wendell found that the new general level of disorganization in the office was a distraction. There was a roach crawling across the floor, and it actually led to Wendell making markings down the wrong number on the forecast in his own work. The mistake led to a big loss in revenue for the company. So although Wendell didn't publicly blame his mistake on the cockroach, he knew that this distraction had helped him to miss his error. Once John returned, Wendell was grateful to have him back and had found a new level of respect for how John contributed to the team. He invited John out for drinks after work and began to see him as an equal and not a lesser person. So when we start to understand that we are mutually connected, that we have to rely on each other, it's the whole reciprocity, then we begin to respect each other for who we are. and our roles within this big universe. So although this is dealing with Wendell, I would love to be able to hear your remarks and how this may apply to you and your setting, your environment, and space and time. And definitely remember, you can reach out to me via Google Hangouts and contact me through the course. And I welcome your questions or suggestions, right, to make sure that this is comfortable for you, and to make sure that you are utilizing your student manual, because there are things in the student manual that's going to help you with the exercises, and that way you can have that hands-on experience. Well, we are done with Module 11, and like I mentioned, please reach out to me if you have any questions. Until then, I will see you in the next module, and have a good day.